Greetings, brothers and sisters. So let's get to the midterm elections today. Mostly because I want to talk about Fetterman, and something incredible happened about Fetterman. But the main thing is Americans are losing faith in the democracy, and that's fairly evident. And I'll show you there's multiple indicators that America is pretty much over the idea of voting, and that there's going to be some sort of change due to the electoral process. So we're, moving closer to reality here. So let's start here with this epic gaffe. I got another gaffe on my other browser toolbar, but let's start here.
Biden's being Biden's being extremist.
It's pronounced apocalypse, Joe.
Biden's being Biden's being extremist.
Boom. Yes, you are. Biden was basically bragging about his success, that he didn't get rolled on election day, on the midterms. Biden says midterm voters sent an unmistakable message about democracy and voting rights. But the truth is, 2/3 don't want Biden in 2024, according to MSNBC's exit poll. They didn't make that a headline, but 2/3 of the people don't want Biden to even run. So that includes plenty of Democrats. So he got support. The Democrats did well because Americans want to be able to have the right to murder fetuses, right? 60% of Americans. And I said this, when all the Republicans were so happy that Roe v. Wade got overturned, I said, why now? Well, it was obvious because they wanted to give themselves a chance not to get rolled in the midterms. That was the number one issue. So the number one thing on people's minds issue was being able to abort babies. And that tells you everything you need to know about America. Here it is, this is abortion rights factor into midterm races. Why Americans voted to protect abortion rights during 2022 midterms. Midterms handed Democrats in Congress a mandate to codify abortion rights. Abortion rights supporters scored midterm victories in at least 3 states. And so we know that they didn't want Biden to run, even though he got support. We know that abortion's a big deal for them. But the more important thing is both sides, and the Dems don't want to say it this way, but they both have doubts in the electoral process. Kari Lake leans on bogus fraud claims in Arizona, risks stoking extremist violence. That's what she does. She's pushing out extremist violence.
In Pennsylvania, where Democrat Josh Shapiro has won the governor's race by a double-digit margin, his Republican opponent, fervent election denier Doug Mastriano, has still not conceded the race. In fact, since Mr. Mastriano...
He's an election denier. An election denier. He denies election results, but he runs in elections.
Danced a little bit to the Rocky song and made a brief statement to supporters last night. He hasn't said anything since. Over in Michigan, the losing Republican Secretary of State candidate there has not been shy. Christina Caramo accused one city clerk in the city of Ann Arbor in Michigan of engaging in mass election crimes.
No way, election crimes.
Just like Doug Mastriano, Christina Caramo has not conceded the race that she lost to incumbent Democrat Jocelyn Benson, despite the fact that, as you can see here, she trails by 14 points.
14 points, and she's still an election denier.
Then there's Arizona. In Arizona, the big ticket races there remain too early to call, as Steve Kornacki has just been telling us. Votes are still being counted. We're watching for votes to come in tonight that could potentially be determinative. We shall see. The race is very close. And that, of course, is why late last night, Republican candidate Kari Lake told her supporters to be calm and patient and wait for democracy to run its course. Obviously, I'm kidding. Of course,
she's funny. She's a comedian. Rachel Maddow.
She didn't say anything like that at all.
This dude's a lot happier than in 2016 when Trump won. That was great.
big day today, and don't let those cheaters and crooks think anything different. And I want you to know we are going to monitor the ballots. The system we have right now does not work. When we win, and I think it will be within hours, we will declare victory, and we will get to work turning this around. No more incompetency and no more corruption in Arizona elections.
You've got to get rid of those cheaters and liars. Liars and cheaters, cheaters and liars.
Woo! Those cheaters and crooks. That speech came after a whole day of Kari Lake and the whole online MAGA universe promoting conspiracy theories about ballot counting machines in Maricopa County stealing the votes or something. Arizona is a place where the far-right pro-Trump movement went through a very recent period of radical...
Okay, so they are demeaning people who say that could be cheating in elections, which there always is. Cheating is... These are slimy liars on both sides. There was a lot of gerrymandering of districts that played into the midterms that I'm not going to get into that, but I watched, various networks with my wife. We were watching it. They were talking about how all these districts had been redrawn. And so that's a way to assure success for your party, to redraw districts, especially to do with the Congress, so that you can get the maximum amount of seats. But, whatever. And so MSNBC's Rachel Maddow was talking about election deniers. The day before, Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp is an exceptional voter suppressor. I actually saw this, right?
24 hours from right now, polls will be closing in Georgia, and the state has already seen record-breaking turnout for early voting. More than 2.5 million ballots have been cast. 49% of those votes.
Boom. So that happened. And they brought Stacey Abrams on here.
I just have to ask you, does the ridiculousness of that other candidate, it's so distracting that I do feel like people have lost sight of the fact that there's a lot of other races going on in Georgia, including a very, very important one, which is the governor's race. How do you...
Yeah, she got rolled. So the original election denier was Stacey Abrams, right? She denied that she lost in 2018. She ran against this guy, Brian Kemp. And she's the one that, pressed all these electoral changes that led to controversy in 2020. And so there was a movie, which I covered in my last video, called Kill Chain, which talked about how it was so easy to hack the electronic voting machines. It was an HBO documentary, but it was leaning towards the Democrats. And of course, Hillary Clinton was the real original election denier by saying that the Russians hacked the election. Even though she had twice the money and all the media, they didn't have enough, right? Enough control, now all the social media. And so this was said right before the election here.
This law made possible are really, really high. Let me give you one example. This is from The Guardian. Jennifer Jones, a Morehouse School of Medicine PhD student, showed up to her precinct in Fulton County, Georgia, on the second day of early voting for the midterms. However, when she reached the check-in station at the polling site, she was informed she would be unable to cast a regular ballot because her validity as a voter was challenged. The poll worker didn't tell me why I was being challenged. Even after calling someone else for assistance, said Jones, they just kept telling me I would have to vote a provisional ballot.
Boom. She couldn't vote, Jones.
And of course, as we know, under this law, Georgia citizens can challenge a voter's eligibility for any number of reasons, an unlimited number of times. And right-wing groups have now mounted thousands of these challenges. And voting provisional ballots means your vote is not as likely to be counted. How
election deniers.
Egregious is this challenge situation? And what do you make of the law's use in that way?
Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger outsourced voter purging. That's what they did. They franchised it to white supremacist groups and to hard right-wing groups to give them the opportunity to do what they no longer can do because of the lawsuits that they faced from my organizations and others.
The lawsuits. She has lawsuits about election integrity.
Regarding their voter purging practices. What we know is that in the state of Georgia, Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger are hard at work denying access to the right to vote. In addition,
Boom. There's voter fraud.
to the young woman you mentioned, I met a young woman who was denied the right to vote because she was living in her car. And even though the state of Georgia permits her to have a P.O. box for that purpose, she was challenged and she was denied the right to vote and
She's denied the right to vote.
not offered an absentee ballot. We know that across the state, people are facing these challenges. We know that we have seen absentee ballots not go out because they changed the law to make it harder to get an absentee ballot, easier for that ballot to be rejected, and they made it more difficult for counties to meet their obligations by truncating the timetable. And starting tomorrow, we are going to have voting where if you're standing in line in Georgia, it's 82 degrees in Atlanta.
The heat. They've rigged the weather.
Imagine if you're down in South Georgia where it's going to be a lot hotter. You can't get water. And if those lines are 4, 5, 6 hours long, if you happen to spill your bottle, you better not get out of line.
Don't spill your bottle. You're not going to be able to vote.
Because no one can give you water. That's the kind of voter suppression.
There's no water available. They're denying water, so your vote won't be suppressed.
That Brian Kemp has always specialized in, targeting with almost surgical precision.
Surgical precision with the heat and the water.
The most vulnerable voters and hoping no one notices.
Okay, so she got rolled. She and Beto O'Rourke both had presidential and vice presidential aspirations. Beto O'Rourke ran for president after losing in Texas. He lost again. She's, in terms of her political success, she writes romance novels, like sensual sort of softcore romance novels under an assumed name. I've covered that before, right? So they have losers in their party, Beto O'Rourke and Stacey Abrams, and she's a celebrity. They showed her going into Target. Somebody sent me a video, maybe it was my wife. She's going into Target, and everyone's like, Stacey Abrams, she's a celebrity in Georgia, and she's never won anything, right? But she's been whining about the voting system there for the past 2 elections, and she is she lost by 10 points. But on the other side, one of my viewers sent me this. It was in Maricopa County, and this happened on election day.
Of course, I know everybody wants to make sure that it reads and everything is fine.
Can you repeat that?
I can promise
Can you start from the beginning and repeat that?
So what happens is we have 2 tabulators. One of the tabulators is not working, okay? The other tabulator is taking about 75% successful. So 25% of them are being misread, and it could be a printer issue, or it could be the tabulator itself. So when it's misread, you have an option to put it into what's called box 3, and it gets read, whether it goes downtown and gets read manually, or whether it gets refed into our tabulator.
You don't want to adjudicate.
They get read, okay? So no one's trying to deceive anyone.
Of course not. Not on election day. That would never happen, right? No, that would never happen.
Okay, so this is supposedly from Maricopa County, where they're still counting votes, and there's 2 races that are undecided there, or at least 2 national races, in Arizona, where Kerry Lake is from. And so there was a warning. I'll get to that in a moment. There's some bogus warning on Instagram that doesn't give any sort of information. But this thing's being passed around. The important thing is whether this is from this year. I mean, this could be from 2 years ago, or who knows when this video was taking place, because people upload things all the time that aren't accurate. But there was another video in which one of my viewers sent, where a guy said the Republican votes can't be counted, but the Democrat votes can. This is an election official. And these videos are making it around the Republican social media. It's being shared across Republican social media channels, just like I'm sure there's things being shared in the Democratic social media channels, right? Because people have lost faith in the election, right? Whether this is accurate or not, or who knows what this is all about, it doesn't matter, because right now people all believe on both sides that the other side's trying to cheat.
Last So choices are, you guys.
Question.
Sure.
If I get up there and that happens to my ballot, can I take my ballot with me and go somewhere else?
You do not leave the premises with the ballot. Sorry, and there's not like you can go
Because
to
I don't trust to go in a box. The box may never make
No,
it down there.
no
That
way.
happens all the time.
The choice is-
I'll come back.
the choice is to wait until.
Missing context. The same information was reviewed by independent fact checkers in another post. So you got to click on that. Where's the other post? Here it is. So you click on it. There's no explanation of the missing context, right? What the missing context is, which is so often the case. But we now know that both sides have questions about the legitimacy of the elections. And that's been going on since Hillary Clinton said the Russians hacked the elections, and then Trump refused to accept the results of the election in 2020. So the last two presidencies and now the midterms and, all this and, democracy's on the ballot box. And so the integrity of the elections are now being questioned by most people. And so when the results come in and your candidate loses, there's going to be people saying, well, that's not true. There isn't a clear victory, right? And, once that happens, why vote? Like it becomes people saying, well, your vote doesn't matter, your vote doesn't count, which is, on a bigger level I've talked about, on a greater level, the whole system's rigged and controlled. But that's the direction. It's just going to get worse. Every election now is going to be questioned, the validity of it. And now cheating is, everyone knows there's cheating. And, I've talked about this with the economy. It's all based in perception, right? The perception that you have a say and, people get on teams. Like, remember there was a team, team this guy or the other guy in the, whatever the characters' names were in the Twilight movies. Are you on team this guy or the other guy? There's some sort of love triangle or something like that, right? People love being on teams. They love to root for people. They love to root for characters in fictional dramas. They love to, root for competitive, athletic, sporting events, schools, like college universities and things, their athletic program. People love to root for one side or another. They like to be invested in the outcome. And they like to think that their interests are being represented by politicians who come and promise things, and they, sort of identify with them, or it's more about hating the other party at this point, but, all of those things. And, they always believe the worst things about the other party. This Stacey Abrams thing where I showed you, I had just completed the video where I was talking about Nancy Pelosi, and she was talking about all the election deniers. And, I showed you in that video where she was denying the results of 2016, which Hillary did. They all do it, right? This is, a term now, and they were saying democracy's on the ballot. That was one of the big Democratic talking points, and that the Republicans were cheaters and election deniers. And yet Stacey Abrams and Hillary Clinton were the original. I mean, this has been going on forever. And then Trump did it, and then they try to demonize that behavior when they themselves do that behavior. And both sides, people who are Republican, believe that their side wouldn't cheat and the Democrats would. And why would you ever think that? Like, why would you think that your side wouldn't cheat and that your side could survive without cheating? We saw this with both steroids in baseball, steroids in the Olympics, and then steroids in the Tour de France. And it came out like, there was a guy, Greg LeMond, and he had won Tour de France before, and even he is, he's under suspicion, but this was years before steroids was as widespread. And he said that a human body can only go up these mountains on a bike, in terms of what the body has to churn out, in terms of blood flow and oxygen levels, all these things, that the human body can only go up the mountain in like 1 hour and 7 minutes, and they were going up the mountains in like 50 minutes, right? And the only way that could be achieved was through enhancing the body in some way through steroids, and they're packing the amount of blood, or they give them testosterone or whatever it is, right? And of course, there's all this steroids, people getting busted for steroids in the Olympics. There was a thing on, remember the swimmer Mark Phelps, and he has a perfectly designed body with short legs but huge feet, which makes no sense. Elongated torso, huge hands, and his body processes lactic acid twice as fast as normal people. So he has a body perfectly designed for swimming, but then he has this other, weird thing. And I talked about how they were making genetically modified athletes, and they said, well, only the Russians will do it. But if you want to compete, and we saw this in baseball, Barry Bonds was one of the greatest baseball players to ever live. And he wasn't a huge home run hitter, but he was an incredible hitter. And Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa both crushed the record, which has finally been broken without steroids. I don't watch baseball, but I'm aware of this, right? But there's this guy, Judge or something like this for the Yankees, who just broke it. But this record, this guy Maris hit 61 home runs. There's a good movie called, I think it's called 61. And he was in a race with Mickey Mantle, and people were giving him death threats because they didn't want him to break the record. I think it was Babe Ruth's record. So, that was back in the 20s or whatever it is, right? And, this record was around forever. And Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa shattered this record. Like, they went way beyond. They got into, like, the 70s or something like that, right? And then Barry Bonds saw this, and he knew he was a much better hitter. He saw all the attention they were getting, and he took steroids. The pitchers were taking it anyway, right? And he, his face, like, doubled. I mean, if you look at his face before and after steroids, like, he just got huge. And they had this advanced steroid stuff called the cream, and he crushed the record. And then they were like, all right, we got to clean this up, because baseball is all about statistics and records, and steroids use was, crushing it. And, you couldn't compete against somebody who was on steroids. I've seen this, years and years ago when I used to work in a gym. I was a mild weightlifter back when I was playing basketball. But one of my coworkers and I were bench lifting the same thing. And I didn't see him for a couple of months. He lifted somewhere else. We worked opposite shifts. And then one day he came into our place. It was like a racquetball club with a small gym. It wasn't like a big weightlifting place. It was when I was in college. And the guy came in, and then he was military pressing what he and I used to bench press. Military press is over your head, and it's much harder. And he was like twice as big as he was before. I'm like, dude, you hitting the roids? He's like, yeah, I'm not. He goes, I don't know if it's good for you. I'm peeing green, right? So I knew a number of my friends who did roids and negative effects, but people, will cheat. There's no difference between athletes' competitive nature or people in the political arena, politicians' political nature, right? People will cheat. It's just, it's human nature. They'll cheat. And you can't compete against somebody who's cheating. You can't beat somebody who's cheating because, they're cheating, right? And, when people go dark on they go scorched earth, you have to go scorched earth. It's just the way it works, right? So that's why politics is a dirty business. And they're all scumbags. I mean, they're the most calculating, conniving. I mean, they're worse people in politics, even much worse than athletes, certainly. And so if one side's cheating, the other side's cheating. They're always trying to game the system. And people, they won't believe it, right? They only, they want a solution. Like most people, even most of you can hear bad stuff about the system as long as you can believe that there's part of the system, like the QBs in there, the good guys that were going to clean up the deep state, you can believe that the system's corrupted, but only if the corruption can be eradicated, that the system can be fixed. There has to be good guys. If there's bad guys, there has to be good guys. And, fortunately for most people, the good guys are in the party that they like, right? They're part of the good guys. But the whole system, it's a whole systemic problem. So people still believe that their side can fix the system. I mean, there's still that. But as soon as that goes, people will stop voting. They'll give up on this idea that anything of this nature matters. I mean, that's the problem with people believing in the left-right paradigm. It leaves them hopeless because that means that their vote doesn't matter and they're helpless to do anything, right? And that the system is unfixable, and most people just can't go there. But anyways, speaking of a broken electoral system, this happened. To add to that, Pennsylvania state representative reelected despite being dead. This is on Fox News. Anthony Tony DeLuca died on October 9th. While we're incredibly saddened by the loss of Representative Tony DeLuca, we are proud to see that the voters continue to show their confidence in him and his commitment to democratic values by reelecting him posthumously. A special election will follow soon. Okay, so I want to move on to Fetterman here. Another thing is that Trump took a beating last night, and it's kind of deserved on his part, and I'll talk about that in a bit when we switch over to my other toolbar. But another thing that we saw is people are so locked in terms of their rigidness in their belief in either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. It's not their belief in the party. It's their hatred, or it's their fear, or it's their prejudice of the other party. And there's no real good candidates out there, which is part of that as well. And you could see this in John Fetterman and Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is a horrible candidate. There's people coming out, he's women showing up saying that he forced them to get an abortion, like 4 of them. He's pro-life, and he's just not smart. And he's an ex-football player who isn't good at public speaking, like AKA Fetterman. And both of these candidates you should never vote for. You should never pull the lever for either Fetterman or Herschel Walker. But because of the party prejudice and because of how divided our country is, that happened. And Fetterman was even elected, and Herschel Walker is in a runoff in Georgia, which probably most of you guys know. Dr. Oz is slimy, talk show host that is really kind of unlikable. So it isn't like he was some great candidate, but Fetterman just had a stroke, which you guys have seen me cover, other people. And he was, he did horrible in the debate, and he still won. And so, look at the guy, right? And there's something like incredible that happened on MSNBC that I'll show you after we go through this Fetterman thing here.
Yeah.
Fetterman. This is great. Fetterman.
Yeah.
So I'm in the editing process right now. And when you see his face and you see him, lurching it up there, and you hear his voice and you hear the crowd cheering, you expect if they turn the cameras around, they'd all have torches and pitchforks. Kill the monster, right? Like he could be cast in some part of a troll or an orc in a Lord of the Rings movie or show without any makeup, right? And this guy could make a lot of money playing some sort of Middle-earthian type of, or even some sort of a giant, right? And like I said before, I like differences. I like people to be different. I'm tired of the same old polished news people and news anchors and political candidates. And so, I like this kind of thing. And yet, how could you vote for this, right? The guy is just suffered a stroke, and before that, he was inarticulate. Woo, you did it, Fetterman.
Yeah.
Look at this guy, right?
I'm not really sure what to say right now. My goodness.
But you're usually so articulate. I don't understand. Sweet. Why don't you say something like, Fetterman smash right now. Fetterman gonna get some cash right now. Fetterman beat Dr. Oz right now. Fetterman's going to eat right now.
I am, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you out there, random yeller in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I'm so humbled. Thank you so much, really. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Woo, Fetterman smash.
Like what is it? It's like 1:30 in the morning and you're still here hanging in?
No way, Fetterman smash. Fetterman go to D.C. right now. Fetterman smash D.C. right now.
We launched this campaign almost 2 years ago, and we had our slogan. It's on every one of those signs right now.
Fetterman smash.
Every county, every vote.
Right now.
Every county, every vote.
Every county, every vote. Every vote counts at every county.
And that's exactly what happened. We jammed them up.
We jammed them up, just like the ballots going through the voting machine. We jammed them up.
We held the line. I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do, and we had that conversation across every one of those counties.
We did. We had that conversation.
And tonight, that's why...
So what happened that, like 3 weeks ago, he was in a debate and he couldn't... Was he nervous? Because he was doing much worse. I mean, he's not a good public speaker now. But he was, they said he had a stroke and what he recovered in 3 weeks. And he's like back to... This is like how he was before the stroke. I mean, he still sucks as a public speaker.
I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
Ooh, Fetterman smash, Fetterman! Right now.
Thanks to all of you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Fetterman smash.
That made me grateful right now. And
he's grateful right now. Fetterman grateful right now. Fetterman smash right now.
I want to thank, of course, all these supporters, all across Pennsylvania, all in this room, all across the nation, everyone that chipped in $10 to help us get here. Thank you.
Fetterman right now. And also I also really want to thank my family. Well, I accidentally stepped on the way out of the house. They're in intensive care right now.
Yeah. My mother, my father, Carl, Susan.
Let's get a look at the parents. Turn the camera around. I want to see Fetterman's parents. Where's Fetterman's parents? There he is with his dad. There he is with, he's about to grab somebody and eat him here. He's, there he is in his sweatshirt. There he is in his other sweatshirt. I guess that's his wife. There's his parents there. They never knew they were going to produce a colossal man in Fetterman. There he is. There he is with a thing around his neck and a suit on. Come on, Fetterman. No suits for you. Put on your sweatsuit.
My brother Greg. Where's Giselle? Where's Giselle? Everyone's favorite, yeah, Giselle.
She's with Tom Brady. Oh, she was.
Who 6 months ago she saved my life. Walking out of a Sheetz bathroom, she recognized what was happening. And also,
she was in a Sheetz bathroom. And she recognized you having a stroke.
And my children, Carl, Grace, August, hey,
Hey, Fetterman's mouth. Fetterman's mouth. There he is. Junior Fetterman's mouth. Go Fetterman's.
So everyone, and thank you. And I also want to thank my team as well, the best team. So many names, Brendan, my campaign manager.
There's Sneezy, and there's Happy, and there's Doc, and there's Bashful. He's got a team from Middle Earth.
Rebecca, Bobby, Joe.
Okay, so we know Fetterman. Hopefully there'll be plenty of opportunities to talk about Fetterman's smash right now in the future. But even better, like, this might not be it for Fetterman. Like, this is just a stepping stone. Fetterman smash Congress, and then Fetterman go on to smash.
Fetterman as a nominee at some point for president.
What? Fetterman for president. Let's just hear that again, because that actually came out of this whose mouth?
Fetterman as a nominee at some point for president. I know there's some variables, obviously, but
Fetterman smash presidency. Fetterman smash White House. Fetterman right now. Fetterman smash White House right now. Fetterman eat vice president right now.
just a few. But I just, what he did in the super red, deep red parts of Pennsylvania, and the way that he ran ahead of Biden, as you were saying, ran ahead of Trump. I mean, it just makes you wonder about his future.
It's definitely his future is going to be him Fetterman smash right now. So that's what these people are actually saying. That guy, that inarticulate, giant-looking MNFer, is going to somehow run for president and win. That Fetterman, who was, who slammed Trump for criticizing the mail-in ballots, and then he filed his own lawsuit ahead of the race here. And Fetterman he's got presidential potential written all over him. I mean, there's no stopping Fetterman. All right, so I was there he is. Last night, there was a copyright issue with my video on my Apocalypse Now channel. I have another channel I post here every other day, for those of you guys who don't know. Look at this guy. And it wasn't enough time for me to get the video because I have slow internet, and, it's 2-hour video. It takes forever to go through they run an AI program on it. I wasn't able to get the video up. So my computer was on all last night uploading it. I went to bed. And so the computer was running slow. So I had to restart it. And so I had to come up with a name for this video in terms of saving it, in the project in Premiere Pro. And I wrote Fetter because I didn't, I didn't feel like I had to write his whole name out, and I thought that would be sufficient. And I realized, hey, Fetter is a word. Like, I wonder what Fetter means. Fetter man, right? There's a Fetter is a thing, like a free man, or like a bowman, or any of these other kind of names that end in man, right? So I looked up Fetter.
Fetter.
A chain or manacle used to restrain a prisoner, typically placed around the ankles. He lay bound with fetters of iron. Restrained with chains or manacles, typically around the ankles, there was no chains immediately available to fetter the prisoner. It's also a verb, to fetter somebody, which is to put to chain them to something, right? And so that's this guy's name. He's a fetter man. I mean, is there a better name for this guy than some manacle around your ankles, right? Like around America's ankles, dragging us down or keeping us from moving forward. Not that Dr. Oz is any treat, obviously a nightmare candidate in his own right, but that's what fetter means. So I asked my wife about this, and she was like, oh, I bet that's where the term unfettered came from, right? Most of us have heard of that. Like that's where the word, I mean, there's not many manacles left, right? And so, but there's just something great about this for you apocalypse laughs fans, right? It's just that he represents everything. And I said, Herschel Walker is a horrible candidate. And they all are. Like, I don't know one candidate I would like to have a conversation with or have spent any time with, right? There hasn't been a politician that I really would say, Trump was funny in his way, and, he did, but he's a jerk, a billionaire, whatever it is. But I could at least watch him on The Apprentice. And all these other politicians, I wouldn't watch a reality show of them. They're not likable. I mean, Fetterman, yes, he's interesting, right? Because of the whole, as a goof. But all these politicians are brutal. Their voices are annoying. They're just so fake. I mean, these news people as well. At least what they're projecting out there, it isn't a real person. And so when you get people who are being elected like this, it means that the electorate system is so broken and people are filled with such hatred for the other side that they'll vote for anything, right? I saw on Fox News there was a headline, or maybe I was scanning the channels, and they were talking about Fetterman means that you'd vote for anybody. I think it was a headline. But then they're not defending Herschel Walker as a, horrible politician or any of these people, right? So the controllers have got this rigged so well that they can throw anything out there and people will still vote. People will still participate, right? And look into it and be psyched about it. I mean, there was a poll out there, and I don't know, 60%, 70% of Americans think America has to be saved. And so they'll do any of this stuff because people are so desperate for some hopium. And, once you realize it can't, then you just, I'll get into the economy at the end of this video. Let's get to the next thing here. So here we are back to here again. Biden says midterm voters sent an unmistakable message about democracy and abortion rights. They also don't want you to run again. An overwhelming majority. White House buoyed by midterm results as Biden avoids his predecessor's fate. It's the Democrats are celebrating this, and they're kind of bummed over at Fox News. But Biden is going to face probably, at least in terms of the House, he's not going to have the House. And it'll be 50-50 in the Senate. But a lot of those senators, the Democratic senators, ran against their party because they had to. They didn't want Biden to be a part of anything. And so, we know that people really want to abort fetuses. They really want to murder fetuses. But Trump was a big loser. And who was the biggest loser on Tuesday? Trump. After Trump-backed candidates lost several key races, it's clear that America's enchantment with the former president is just about over. And DeSantis is being pimped out there, even on MSNBC and CNN. They want to all get rid of Trump. But they don't, because what would they talk about, right? What does a world without Trump look like for MSNBC and CNN, right? So, Trump's big crime, and it's the worst thing he could have done, was the warp speed thing. I mean, Trump really pushed that out there. He got so worked through that whole COVID process, closing down the economy. He got worked across the board. And then he turned on his supporters. I mean, just bad stuff. And so, Trump was my favorite president in character, political character, because of, all of this stuff he did. But there were so many things that got pushed through under him that made things worse. And, he was a part of it, right? And, DeSantis is Trump, a controlled version of Trump, right? And so, we'll see how that all plays out. Here's Trump on DeSantis.
There are indications that former President Trump may announce his 2024 presidential candidacy as soon as a week later, and he gave a preview of what that might look like when he was stumping in Pennsylvania. Listen to this.
Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%, Mike Pence at 7. Oh, Mike's doing better than I thought.
DeSanctimonious.
DeSanctimonious is not a good nickname. Like, he's got to work harder on that. So it got bad for Trump because the New York Post, which has been, I don't think I've ever seen them write anything critical about Trump on the New York Post, but this was on their front page. Here's how Donald Trump sabotaged the Republican midterms. Hey, Lying Ted and Sleepy Joe, meet toxic Trump. You know, if the former president had any self-knowledge or even the slightest ability to be self-deprecating, he might consider giving himself this alliterative nickname. After 3 straight national tallies in which either he or his party or both were hammered by the national electorate, it's time for even his stands to accept the truth. Toxic Trump is the political equivalent of a can of Raid. And so he misses, it's just about to say, God bless the USA. There's that song, that country song. They all got their cameras out because they want to get this. It's not going to be available anywhere else.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. This has been a very exciting
It's very somber.
night. We have some races that are hot and heavy, and we're all watching them here.
Hot and heavy.
And some of you like the music so much that you'd rather hear the music, and I
Because, you know, you're toxic at this point.
understand that very well. So we're doing combinations of both. I'd like to welcome the fake news media, which is back there.
Fake news. So I'm willing to see what happens in, a year, basically, when they start running. I'm sure DeSantis is going to run, and the Republicans and Fox News and, all the establishment wants DeSantis. I don't know what the liberals and the Dems are going to do. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Biden and who they're going to try to run. And, that could be a real crap fest. I mean, it could be an absolute mess. We're going to see what happens with the economy after Christmas, and I'll talk about that. We'll see what happens, but only the few real hardcore Trumpers, and I think that's probably only 20%, like 20% of the country, would believe that he can solve things and save America. I think most people kind of realize that ship has sailed for Trump. But it could be interesting, so we'll see what it looks like, right? Either it's just going to be, you just go away, or it'll be just a scorched earth, because Trump goes scorched earth. That's the one thing he does. It's kind of funny and good. And if him and DeSantis go scorched earth and whatever the Democrats are doing to get rid of JoJo, I mean, it's going to be, there'll be some quality laughs to be had, right? So I got another gaffe, which I already, I saw this morning on New York Post. But one of my viewers sent me this on Instagram, that JoJo Magooze says he intends to run again.
Interpret last night's results in terms of deciding whether you want to seek another term. Is it now more likely that you will run? And what's going to be your timeline for consideration?
Well, first of all, Jill and I have, and by the way, it's my wife Jill.
I'm Jill's husband. This is Jill's husband.
Who's held a lot more popular than I am in the Democratic Party, too. But anyway.
Yeah, they hate me. Yeah, I suck.
All kidding aside.
There's a lot of kidding. That was some serious kidding. I'm laughing hard. I got stitches from all your kidding.
Our intention is to run again. That's been our intention, regardless of what the outcome of this election was. And the fact that we won, I didn't run, the fact that the Democratic Party outperformed anything anyone expected and did better than any off-year presidency since John Kennedy is one that gives everybody like, whew, sigh of relief.
Okay, so you didn't win. You have lost the House. You have officially lost the House. And you're going to, either tie in the Senate, where you're going to have Kamala break the vote. There's a lot of these Democratic senators. I mean, he still has that guy from West Virginia and whatever that other one from Arizona, right? And he's got other senators who had to run against his platform and his party. So they had to run against their own party to retain their seats. And they didn't want you to campaign with them. And 2/3 of the people said they didn't want you to run. And so he didn't win.
That the mega Republicans are not taking over.
The mega Republicans? What about the MAGA Republicans?
Over the government again, et cetera. And so my judgment of running when I announce, if I announce, my intention is that I run again. But I'm a great respecter of fate, and this is ultimately a family decision. I think everybody wants me to run, but we're going to have discussions about it. And I don't feel in any hurry one way or another to make that judgment, today, tomorrow, or whenever, no matter what my predecessor does.
You mean Trump?
What's your thinking?
My guess is, I hope Jill and I get a little time to actually sneak away for a week around between Christmas and Thanksgiving.
I like to sneak.
My guess is it'd be early next year we make that.
See, the thing is that this is going to be great because they don't want him. A lot of Republicans don't want Trump. I mean, this is, the economy, it's going to be bad. In 2 years, it's going to be bad. There's going to be noticeable, panic and, what can we do to turn this thing around, and, people freaking out about their, whatever's disappearing, their wealth is disappearing. I mean, we know what their goal is here. And so this will all be interesting. There's another gaffe to get to here. Biden says Russia pulling out of Fallujah in latest brutal gaffe. And so it starts here.
What would happen if, in fact, after I think the context is that whether or not they're pulling back from Fallujah and from the Kherson, the city of Kherson, and they're coming back across the river to the eastern side of the river, the Russian forces. And I said, what's going to happen is they're going to both lick their wounds, decide what they're going to do over the winter, and decide whether or not they're going to compromise.
Okay, so there's a lot there. First of all, the Russians were never in Fallujah. I don't know where Fallujah came from. Fallujah was a brutal, I don't know if you guys remember it, but America had to drop depleted uranium. And there's still, you can Google the birth defects of the people in Fallujah. There's kids playing on these shells, like big, giant, like bullets that are there, right? That didn't explode. And they're radiating out depleted uranium. Depleted uranium is what's left over from nuclear power plants. And it's got a radioactive half-life of like 4 billion years. It's going to be toxic for the next 4 billion years. And so they don't know what to do with this stuff. They've put it in buildings, using it like rebar, which means that there are these buildings radiating out toxic radioactive materials. And they also put it in munitions. And if it, like a shell hits a tank, it'll incinerate the tank. It burns at a very hot temperature. So they add it to these bullets. And all these kids are suffering birth defects, and Fallujah was brutal. So it was something that, you'd be better off forgetting. And it was in Iraq, right? Now, if he said Afghanistan, it would make more sense because the Russians were in Afghanistan years and years ago, back when, America was partner teams with bin Laden, right? When he was recruited by the CIA and whatever it was. And they trained him and all that stuff. But the Russians were in Afghanistan in the 80s, whatever it was. But they were never in Iraq and never in Fallujah, and he just pulled out of Afghanistan. So if he said Afghanistan, it would be weird and wrong, but at least it'd have there'd be some pathway to him saying that. But the greatest part of this thing is watch his eyes here, because when he makes a mistake and he realizes he makes a mistake, he closes his eyes really tight. He's either trying to squeeze the answer out of his brain, or he's wishing that he can remember the right thing here.
I think the context is that whether or not they're pulling back from Fallujah and from the Kherson, the city of Kherson. And
he closed his eyes really tight and he just like hopes, right? He's hoping, or he's trying to force the right answer out of his brain. Whoopi Goldberg, this count doesn't exist anymore. A variety of people sent me this. My wife was saying that there was a thread on Twitter and someone it said Whoopi Goldberg is off of Twitter. And somebody said, I never knew she was on it, right? This only hurts these celebrities, these woke celebrities, because, it's Twitter and it's one of the main, it's Twitter and Instagram is the way celebrities connect with their fans. But Whoopi's off. LeBron James and others impersonated by verified Twitter accounts. The misleading accounts popped up Wednesday. Some have already been suspended. So it seems like there's some sabotage going on. They just can't handle this idea that people can post things that aren't consistent with the official indoctrination, the official narrative and story. The spoof accounts popped up Wednesday afternoon after Twitter officially began rolling out the $7.99 a month version of its Twitter Blue subscription service. And that's for people who they want the check, they got to pay for it, right? Biden says Elon Musk's relationship with foreign countries worthy of being looked at.
Do you think Elon Musk is a threat to U.S. national security, and should the U.S. and with the tools you have investigate his...
A threat to U.S. national security? Really? Is he a threat to the mainstream media, right? Because nobody wants to watch you, and if there's an alternative, then people will watch that, right?
His joint acquisition of Twitter with foreign governments, which include the Saudis?
Wow. That's funny. That's some funny stuff there.
I think that Elon Musk's
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
cooperation and or technical relationships with other countries.
You mean like what about Hunter, right? What about you and Hunter?
Is worthy of being looked at. Whether or not he is doing anything inappropriate, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that it's worth being looked at. But that's all I'll say.
He's really slowing down. He just doesn't have it, right? He's, I'd be shocked if they run this guy, but they don't have they don't have a real alternative, right? And who else are they going to run? So this happened. Sean Penn gives Zelensky his Oscar until Ukraine wins war. This is so pathetic. We got some chocolates here, got some bull testicles, and a lot of water.
This is for you. Oh, Sean.
Oh, you shouldn't have. I didn't get you anything.
No, please. That is yours. No, I feel terrible outside.
He feels terrible, so he's giving you an Oscar. Like, this is so symbolic of what a woke piece of crap Sean Penn is. Like, this is so, cringe. Remember he said, if the Oscars don't invite Zelensky to appear, he was going to melt his Oscar. He promised that, and he didn't deliver. But now he's going to give it to him in this, pathetic attempt.
It's just a symbolic, silly thing.
Yes. It is a silly thing. You're a silly person, and this guy's a silly actor, a former comedian, and he is an actor, so he doesn't deserve an Oscar, but, might as well give it one, Spicoli, right?
But if I know this is here with you, then I'll feel better and stronger for the fight.
Exactly. He'll feel better and stronger if I know this is here with you. for some reason. It makes no sense to anybody.
Great tournament, but until we win.
When you win, bring it back to Malibu.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Because I'll feel
Okay.
much better knowing there's a piece of me here.
Okay, that's a piece of you? I thought you were going to smelt it. You were going to smelt it, you liar.
Well, there you have it. Some of the final touches for the 94th Academy Awards. They'll be tonight.
Woo!
Historically.
Look at this doing his do-rag. Is that Fetterman's brother?
Some were actually saying that the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, should be invited to speak during the show. Now, the Academy hasn't
He was an actor, right?
quite weighed in on that, but Sean Penn, two-time Oscar winner, did, and he actually released a statement speaking on CNN saying that if it's known the Academy decided not to pursue
Let's just go right to Sean Penn. Here he is.
What's happening, I would encourage everyone involved to know that though it may be their moment, and I understand that, to celebrate their films, it is so much more importantly
So much more important, Ukraine.
Moment to shine and to protest and to boycott that Academy Awards. And I myself, if it comes back to it, when I return, I will smelt mine in public.
He'll smelt it. He's going to smelt. The one who smelt it dealt it. He's going to smelt his Oscar. But you didn't smelt your Oscar in public because I searched for it and I just found this. You saying you're going to, not, you saying you're going to smelt it and not smelting it. Why didn't you smelt it, Sean? Hey, Sean, why didn't you smelt your Oscar, bro? I didn't see any smelting. Okay, speaking of smelting. So this says King Charles and Camilla nearly hit with eggs on walkabout. They're going on walkabout in York. Boom, there was an egg. He saw it. Boom, there's another one. Ooh. Ooh, stop throwing eggs, you egg throwers. Boom, there it is, different angle. Look at this guy in his fancy uniform. This guy in his uniform, this clown right here. It's so pretentious. Ooh. Ooh. Don't throw eggs. Ooh, who's throwing eggs? Where are the eggs coming from? This guy's trying to get through his security. Let's get those egg throwers. Start shooting those egg throwers. Yay, we got the egg throwers. What's the criminal charges for throwing the eggs at the king? So one of my viewers sent me this. Hyperinflation could cause worst economic crisis since WW2. Elliott Management warns. There's going to be lots of this stuff, but until it really starts hitting people, and it's hitting some people, it's hitting us all a little bit. And, we see the gas prices and other things. But until it really has some serious effects, then, people aren't going to flip out or understand it's always too late, right? It's always, people realize things way too late. And so let me just talk about this a little bit more in a narrative here. So I don't really want to wrap this thing up, and I talk about this so much, but, the economy's screwed, and there's multiple ways to look at it, and I've said the number one way, aside from the debt-based economic system being built for a short life and failure, that morally we've broken down and we're disconnected from God, and you can only go so far in that situation. So yeah, there's all of that, but it's starting to hit. And the one thing I wanted to say is, now the election's over, I think we have until after Christmas, just based in, that's how they usually do it. They don't like to screw up the Christmas season, except all bets are off, so we don't know. But after Christmas, that's when the economy starts going south. That's when they start censoring again, because YouTube has a lot of ads. I mean, all these social media platforms run their best ad revenue right now, especially during the electoral process. And so they wanted to keep the economy going through the Biden, through the midterms, to prop this whole thing up, the Dems up. And, that happened. And now I think they'll keep it going at least through Christmas, and then who knows what happens. diesel crisis, I mean, shortages, all these things, right? And maybe they don't even do that. You know, everything's changed now. So, but in the past, they always waited till after Christmas. And so, I mean, that's when I'm personally like sort of preparing for all this stuff. And we're going to see what the damage is and, you know, how bad it's going to get and how quickly things are going to accelerate to where, you know, at some point in the future, we're all going to need to start growing food or whatever. I don't know when that is, but there's going to need to be local foods. You won't be able to get food shipped in from other places, and the grocery stores are going to be empty, and that could be, you know, coming to a supermarket near you. And so we'll see. You know, usually they do it in little doses, like the boiling frog, but we'll see how it goes. But I think by the election, you know, in 2024, things are going to be really apocalyptic. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.